Hello everyone and welcome back to Mass Appeal with Kansas City T-Bones manager John Massarelli. Mass Appeal is a weekly program that gives you, the fans, the opportunity to ask the Kansas City manager questions about the T-Bones, baseball or sports in general, or just seek John's wisdom about life events that are going on. In this week's episode, John talks to us about the All-Star selection of Mark Haynes. He shares his enthusiasm about his beloved Cleveland Browns as they head into training camp. And if John had his choice, what group of people would he like to see eaten by zombies? Let's get right to Mass Appeal. So let us welcome back Kansas City T-Bones manager John Massarelli. John, let's first of all begin with your team updates for us.
Well, we added Jimmy Mojica, and for lack of a better word, we released Nate Tenbrink, although he's still trying to get healthy. I just didn't have a roster spot to put him anywhere, so but it was he just struggled coming back from that injury, and hopefully we're going to get him back later. Jimmy won't travel with us right now. He's still staying in town, but he's a nice addition to our lineup, at least at home.
You know, he had been with you before, and then you re-signed him. Is that right?
Right. He couldn't travel. He still works, or he has a job. His wife's expecting a baby, so he's kind of doing this while we're at home. He lives right here in Bonner Springs, so it's a nice guy to have off the street here for us. Absolutely.
He's been having quite a bat for you there. So.
Right.
Before we get into our fan questions, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about the All-Star team Mark Haynes added. Tell us a little bit about what you think in terms of his selection.
Well, I was excited for Mark. Here's a guy that's coming back from Tommy John surgery. 2 years now. Last year was a real struggle for him coming back from that injury. And so he's one of the hardest working guys that we have, and he's proven it on the field. He's come in and done his job. He earned the closer role, wasn't handed to him at the beginning of the year, and has been a very reliable guy for us. And I'm very excited to see he gets that honor.
Well, that was a good addition for the team for sure. Well, let us head into our fan questions this week. We start with Jim from Liberty, who says, being a former catcher, how do you feel about the rules that banning running into the catcher to try to dislodge the ball?
I got a lot of opinions on that. I think where MLB got away from it is, when I was playing the game, you only ran over the catcher when he was blocking home plate. And that's kind of, and then all of a sudden, in the last 15 years, it turned into a proof of someone's manhood where guys would go out of their way when the catcher wasn't even in the play or in the way. Like, for instance, the Buster Posey injury. There's no reason to even run over the catcher in that situation. The catcher's on the other side of the plate. And I think if they would have started calling runners out, running out of the baseline into the catcher, it would have taken care of itself. Now they're calling it like the book reads, which you can block the play with the ball in your hand. They just got to give a running lane for the runner, which is how it's always read. The association doesn't abide by the MLB rules. We are still allowed to run over catchers in this league, but and on another note, it's also, to me, the worst taught skill for catchers all the way up in the big leagues. I was fortunate to be taught by a big league guy, Gary Tuck, who was a big league bullpen coach for years and years and taught me the right way, and I passed that on to my catchers. And I believe he's still teaching it. There's one or two guys in the big leagues. Other than that, it's very poorly instructed, even at the major league level.
So really the injuries that were happening were more people kind of breaking the rule, or catchers really not understanding how to block the plate properly?
A combination of poor instruction and catchers putting themselves in very vulnerable positions and runners going out of the way to attack catchers. So I think it was a combination of both.
Interesting.
And I think MLB slipped up on that.
Are you then opposed to the fact that they banned that altogether?
Right, to me, if you just police those two avenues, it take care of itself. It's taught better, and if you can only run over the catcher if he's in the way, and that's an easy judgment. They're judging it now at second base, so it should be an easy judgment at home. You can easily tell when a catcher goes out of the way, and you can even review it if he goes out of his way and a catcher's not even blocking home plate. So
interesting. Henry from Missouri would like to know, with all these guys playing winter ball, do you think there is a point where people are simply playing too much baseball and not giving their body a rest?
Well, that is more of a. This is what these guys do for a living. The guys that are playing winter ball, they've been in the game long enough, and it takes a couple of years. It's probably, about my third year. It was in the Florida State League when it was about 125 every day. It seemed like, and I felt like my body wore down and I was exhausted at the end of the year. But by my fourth season in pro ball, and I went to winter ball, it didn't even bother me anymore. It's how I made a living. That was my mindset. This is what I do to pay my bills. And once you get to that point where you've played it long enough, it doesn't even wear you down. You're tired at the end of the year, but a couple weeks off and you're ready to go to winter ball and start making a living again. So, to me, my last 4 years as a player, I played 12 months out of the year, it seemed.
And that you never felt like that was taking away from your like you were getting tired after a while or anything like that?
No, all you need at that point is, if it's the end of the season, a good 2-week break, and you're ready to get back at it. Your body recovers quicker.
John from Olath would like to know from you, who has been your favorite player to coach?
That's a hard question, doing it this long, because I've had a lot of favorite players, but if you watch the T-Bones and you watch Tyler Massey play the game, those are my favorite players. All you got to do is watch him play the game, and you'll know what type my favorite player is.
It's more a style then for you.
Yep, definitely a style of how you're playing the game. And to me, he plays the game. There's no off button with him.
Tom from Kansas City asks of you, I hear a lot of talk about a guy as a player's manager. I don't really think I understand that exactly. Can you explain what that means?
I think as baseball's progressed, through time, you're getting just guys being more experienced managing just because there's more of a path to look at guys. But a player's manager is more, compared to a fan, understands that when the shortstop boots the ball and in the ninth inning and allows the winning run to score, that I'm not yelling at him for doing that. He's not making mistakes on purpose. That as a player, you understand what you can and can't control and what's part of the game. And so that's where, fans think that you got to really motivate or get in guys' faces or, to me, just let them play. Make sure the only thing a good manager controls is attitude and effort. And when you're not getting that is when to me, that's being a player's manager, because that's what a player wants controlled, attitude and effort.
Hector from St. Joseph would like to know from you. He says he saw a catcher wearing some kind of special padding that went behind his legs, so when he crouched down, it cradled the upper part of his leg. Have you seen this, and what do you think about the use of this kind of padding?
Soft. Players today are soft. They don't want to. It teaches bad mechanics behind the plate because you're using the support. Your legs are supposed to be doing the work. And all that does, those pads, all they do is make it feel like it's easier to catch and stay back there. But what it's really doing is putting more pressure on your joints that you don't feel, like ligaments. And those eventually wear out. If you're taught proper catching, the stress is on your quads or your legs, which, as we know, get tired for a while, but then they get stronger and don't wear out. So it's just, to me, it's poor mechanics when a guy's using that, and he's actually hurting himself if he's going to do it long term.
Does that hinder a person from being able to throw out runners?
If you're using the pad, it's a poor position to be in.
Gotcha.
Even if you're wearing those pads, if runners on base or there's a blocking situation, your legs better be off those pads or you're not in a proper position to do either of those things. It's a lazy man gadget.
Okay. That's interesting. Ben from Kansas City asks, he says his son's baseball coach doesn't like the way that he stands up close in the batter's box and wants him to move back, saying that it would improve his timing. If he is having success, shouldn't he stick with what works?
Yes.
That's the good answer. I know that a lot of coaches push for that kind of idea of having a guy go further back in the box, but you don't see that that's necessarily an advantage?
If this is a youth coach, first thing I want to know is he a dad or is he a guy that's played the game at a high level? If he's someone that's played the game at a high level, maybe there's a reason. But generally, that's putting a Band-Aid on a problem. You're having a guy back off the plate.
Hal would like to know. I'm sorry.
He should be a minimum shoe size away from the plate for most guys.
Okay.
The size of his shoe.
Hal would like to know from you, what do you talk about with the opposing manager when you come to turn in your lineup card before the game?
Oh, it depends if we like each other or not, but usually talk about our last series in, travel, how the hotel was in the last town, where we're going next, good places to eat.
You have good recommendations for managers to come to Kansas City?
I do. You know, Forney's got good ideas from Winnipeg on where to eat in Winnipeg. You can tell he hasn't missed a meal. Neither is Simonik. Baggert, on the other hand, is as big as a rail. All he eats is smoothies and yogurt all day, I think. So he's not a good guy to ask.
That's very true. And he runs like for an hour before every game or
something,
too.
Can't ask him about anything. George in St. Paul hasn't missed many meals, so he's a good guy to ask.
So look at the manager, and that'll help you to find out who's got the good suggestions. Ben from Salina asks, was it hard as a player to continue to push every day if your team is out of the race?
No, when you become a pro at it, and I mentioned in an earlier question, when it's what you're doing for a living, then every time you take the field, it doesn't matter what your team's record is, you're playing for your next job or you're playing to pay your bills, and your performance will reflect that on your next contract. So, when you're not in the big leagues with a guaranteed $45 million over the next 3 years, you're that middle-class guy like I was, that AAA journeyman. You're playing for your livelihood every night.
Sandy from Des Moines would like to know where you rate Mike Piazza in terms of all-time catchers.
Mike was fortunate. I was a teammate of Mike in the Arizona Fall League in 1992, the year before he broke out in the big leagues in '93. So it was fun to watch his career. And I would, offensively, you got to rate him number one. Mike was never obviously. Mike's not there for his defense in the Hall of Fame. He was okay defensively, but he was. You look at all the records, he'd have to rank as the number one hitting catcher of all time.
Jose from Independence asks, are you conflicted by the fact that Kansas City and Cleveland are battling for the Central Division lead in the American League?
I am not. There's my wife in the background. She's a big Tribe. I'm more of a baseball fan than a Tribe fan. I love my Browns. I love the Cavs. Baseball's more my livelihood. I played for the Indians organization, so I look at it, I enjoy it more because both teams are good, and I get to see, and I'm in both those towns when things are going on. So I get to follow the Royals closely. I learn, how Yost manages a team, and then I can go at home, and Francona is one of the best, and I'll go to the games. Rusty Kuntz for Royals is an old coach of mine, so he leaves me tickets whenever I need them, and so I'll go to the games in Cleveland and in KC, and so I enjoy watching both teams, if that answers the question.
Oh, that's a good answer. Paul from Kansas City asks, he says he doesn't know about you, but it seems that it's hard to get excited about the Olympics. Do you feel the same way?
Well, Paul, until you answered that question, I didn't realize the Olympics were this year. 2, I have no idea when they start. 3, I think they're in Rio?
That's correct, yes. So you are right.
Okay, I got it. Other than that, there's not one event I'm even thinking about I can't wait to miss.
Yeah, I think the only thing I know about is like Michael Phelps. They're still competing. That's all I can tell you.
That, who knows? But I'll probably turn off Sports Center during that time because they'll dominate the sports with that, and I won't really care what happens in riflery shooting or any other sport they do in the summer.
David from Cleveland asks, training camp is underway. Give us some hope for the Browns.
Here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Oof, oof. It's a new wave of Believeland going on in Cleveland. We're going to have a Cavs Pride World Series and then a Brownie Super Bowl all in 1 year.
Well, I have to tell you, if the Browns go to the Super Bowl, that'd be the greatest turnaround of all time.
It's going to be the surprise team. They're going to do, Hugh Jackson's going to do what Andy Reid did to the Chiefs 2 years ago.
That'd be awesome. I'd like to see that. The fans deserve a big turnaround like that. Heading into our last two questions of the week, we have a couple of journalism-related questions. First of all, is Dan from Kansas City. He says, Mass, I like your comments about journalists. Do you think we could get all those talking heads on cable news to shut up for a while?
No. No. I enjoy watching the conventions, but I don't enjoy watching the play-by-play afterwards where they don't, everyone seems to have an opinion. They all stink.
You know, I have to say, I don't really like that about anything nowadays. You watched whatever went on, and then somebody feels like they need to tell you what you should think about what you just saw.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Our last one is from Charlie from Topeka. He says, Skipper, love the show. Here's my question for you. If there was a zombie apocalypse, what would you want to see eaten first? Journalists, politicians, or umpires?
Good question, Charlie from Topeka. But it's a really easy answer because only one of those three people tell the truth or are honest. And I'll let you guys figure out which one of those three is honest.
So that's who you want to see eaten, is the one telling the truth, or the other two are out?
Two of them I want eaten.
Awesome.
And, I'll make it easy because the journalists and the politicians are two-headed monsters, so that's really one and the same of a zombie.
It does seem that way.
So if you just bite the head of one of those two, I think you'd kill the other one. The umpires are good guys. They work hard and do a good job.
Well, thank you.
I can't say about the other two.
Well, thanks for joining us this week, John.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
We want to thank Manager John Massarelli for joining us on Mass Appeal this week. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask the Kansas City T-Bones manager, just send them to us at askjohn@minorleaguesportsreport.com. That's askjohn@minorleaguesportsreport.com. Please have your questions to us by Thursday evening so we can give the skipper a little time to review them before we record the show. I want to thank you for joining us this week. I'm Rob Pannier, the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, and we'll see you next time on Mass Appeal.